question how many issues I do have.
Well, of course, because you... Yeah. Okay, so let me preface here for the listener. You're anorexic, bulimic. How much do you weigh? Right. How much do you weigh right now? Do you know?
I'd say around 155.
And how tall are you?
I'm shy of 6 feet tall.
So you are really lean. You are really lean. I'm like 5'9.5", 5'10" after yoga, you know. and I'm about 155-ish, somewhere in there.
But this thing is I mean.
So my point is, are you a good candidate for the protocol? That was my question.
Right.
And no, if you came into the clinic, Denise and I would look at each other and go, "Oh shit, we got an anorexic."
But I'm not.
But because you believe it, right? You feel it. You're like, but it's not my best. Oh my God, Robin, I could be so much leaner. I'm feeling horrible about my weight. I'm like 6 foot and 150. Like if you saw someone medically, they'd be like, if they did body comps or whatever, they might actually say you should potentially gain about 15 pounds. But I don't do that either. It's like your body's going to naturally regulate itself if you just stop manipulating everything so intensely. And with that said, you're going to have symptoms of starvation, especially since, how long have you been doing this? Not the protocol, starving yourself, binging, dieting, bulimia, the purging, the exercise. How long?
It's probably 14, and I had about like a 3-year hiatus when I had my first kid.
Yeah, but were you still dieting? Were you still restricting, just less restrictive?
I would say probably just little mini binges. No, I didn't try to restrict because every time I did, it would cause a problem, and I really didn't want to do that anymore. But then when I couldn't lose the baby weight, I went back to dieting, and it went back. Yeah,
and you were purging, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, binge purge, diet, binge purge.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's why I question how much physical damage I have, just metabolically. That's all. That's why I'm like, just don't, you know. But, you know,
well,
I need to have some recovery time first before I even can say, you know. Of course, my body doesn't feel good right now.
Well, exactly. You're kind of, that's the thing. Your body has been, so what happens when someone chronically restricts is you become sensitive to food, especially food that is metabolically more powerful stimulant like starches. And so as you restrict those foods, you become incredibly sensitive. The adrenals become more sensitive. These are symptoms of starvation. The thyroid suppresses, so your actually energy levels go way down. You might have more kyphotic posture. You know what kyphosis is, or kyphotic posture? That's like hunchback.
Okay.
You might have more headaches, just lethargic. Those are all symptoms of starvation that you've probably had chronically. And so when you reintroduce food, you know, if you were to study how to reintroduce food to an anorexic, they would say do not start with starches because you're more likely to have a heart attack. So, you know, it's kind of like all of those diet gurus out there who are like, low sugar, low starch, no dairy, all this elimination. What they don't realize is happening is food then really does become a source of danger. So with anorexics that are hospitalized, it's a very slow process reintroducing food because you're going to shock the organs. And they'll feel physically ill. They're going to get super bloated. So it's really common. I'm not laughing at this. It's just like people come to me not realizing when I eat food, I get super bloated. It's true. And like, I'm really sensitive. I'm like, yeah, because you're starving and that's how the body responds when you starve. It's not necessarily the food, it's the starvation that creates that symptom.
No, it's good to hear. It's good to hear that's all normal. So I definitely have all that. So, okay.
There's a reason why I didn't reply to your messages, by the way.
Oh, I figured you would cover it.
Well, yes, but there's oftentimes when I get messages, if I hear you're going kind of down a little bit, I could have been wrong. It's just like, I'm going to let them sit in there. I'm going to let them sit in this. I don't know. I'm not going to respond to it. Not because I'm being mean. It's just like you need to really sit in where you're at and resolve some of these issues for yourself. But yeah, we can cover it too. The being super tired part is a consequence of what you've been doing, and you're going to have to write it out. And give your body space to recover, to get in food shape, if you want to call it that. The binging and purging too, so terrible when you really look at how it affects the enamel of your teeth, the esophagus, the issues in clients that I've had that have used diuretics. They've had blockage issues where they've had to go to the hospital. I've had one client who we had to cancel an appointment because she was in the emergency room with a blockage and she did not tell them she was abusing diuretics. Oh, no. I know. And I was just like, did you tell them that you are abusing diuretics? No. It's like, oh, honey, this is what you get when you try to be thin for healthy.
So I've lost at least 4 teeth because of this.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, look at what you've had for thinness. I'm willing to lose my teeth for thinness.
So I did not think, this is how much I've kind of been in denial about everything too, is that, anyway, I didn't think I was a binger, Robin.
I know. Week. Well, I'm so happy you see the connection, because a lot of people who are anorexic don't see that binge exists because there's a purge.
Right.
And the purge is always kind of making things invisible because there's no damages, and I'm not obese. The other thing is when people think of a binge, people who've never really done it or they've got book knowledge around it, so they think that you're going to eat like 5 loaves of bread and you're going to eat like not just the whole bag of chips, but you're going to eat like the massive amount. And that is the case for some people, especially purgers. Because if you know, like for me in my bulimia, if I knew I was going to be purging, the amount of food that I would binge on met up significantly, because I knew I was just going to puke it out.
I've had times like that. I've had periods like that.
Yeah, and then there'll be times where I'll eat it all, can't eat more, purge, eat more, purge, eat the rest of it, and purge again.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've done that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's been days.
It's about as ugly as it can get.
No, that is the worst, isn't it? When you're just like rapid fire, binge purge, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and lots of soft stuff in between.
Yeah, and when you change your purged from actual puking to, let's just say, exercise. So, but I don't know if that's happened to you too, where you're like, I cannot do this anymore. My teeth are falling out. I'm ruining my teeth. My new teeth that I just put in are now getting, I have to take them out before, whatever the issue is.
Right.
I'm going to exercise. And so what happens when you change the purge is the binge starts to change so that it's somewhat equal to each other. Which is amazing to me, because this is clear evidence this isn't a food addiction problem. Because if it was, the purge would have no influence on the binge at all. And so the same thing goes with even someone who is just a strict binge eater. If you change the way that they diet, even if some people don't diet at all, because they're in that perpetual I will fix it later mode. So they're kind of being chased by a famine. They never really get to the famine, or the famine never really gets to them, but they're running from a famine. I will never be able to eat again. Oh my God. So that's a binger who never really actually diets. That ultimately, when you when you stop the diet, when you get them to you're not going to diet for, let's just say, in conversation and foresight, you're going to start dieting tomorrow, or we're going to start on Monday. That impulsively increases their binge. If you say, look, you're not going to diet for a year, that desensitizes their binge. They're still binging. It's just the binge quantity gets a lot less. Yeah, and that to me is a very clear evidence. This is not about the food. This is about deprivation.
If it was about the food, they couldn't stop themselves no matter what.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. So so in terms of like differentiating someone who may have a food addiction from someone who is binge eating, that would be, to me, a clear test. I have never met someone who the way of fixing the damages didn't change the actual binge. To me, that's body image, right? Yeah. There's a direct body image link. So, but then again, I might not be attracting people who to work with me who are strict food addiction people. But
the thing is people don't understand so much about their problems when they come to you, though. So it's not like, well, I'm not that kind of a binger. I really am a food addict. I'm not going to go see Robin. It's like people don't really know. So it's when you're sifting it through them. So I see what you're saying about the attraction thing, but I don't really see that being true.
I agree, because I know I'm just giving that to the binge eater or the food addictor. The person that's food addicted watching this, I just try to give that to them.
Well,
because I could be wrong. There's legitimate reality that I'm unaware of, and I could be wrong. That is true. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm so right all the time.
No, it's true, and everybody has a different spin on it too.
So where the quantity of like, this is really about body image versus this is about marriage. This is about being alone. This is about me feeling like a complete and total failure. This is about childhood molestation, that where I prefer to keep this fat. Losing weight makes me feel vulnerable, even though being fat makes me feel like a failure. The chaos between social desire which is still body image. That's still body image, right? So it's like, what is your body image and how this is impacting your relationship with food, and how the need to manipulate the body and how it represents who you are, the identity that you've created, which is really the issue. How that changes how you relate to food. If it does, it's not a food addiction. It's a byproduct. The other thing about food addiction that I've really thought intensely about is that when you look at, let's just say, the brain of animals like cocaine addicts, where they use mice, they use rats, and they manipulate their brain they don't have a frontal cortex, so they don't process and think. They're just 100% driven on that mammal area of the brain. And how they've seen, where they change the cage for the rat, where it's got wheels and other things and other animals, and how they don't necessarily go towards the cocaine like the animal that's been caged with no fun, no joy, right? They're going to go to the cocaine all the time. The other thing that you see commonly in the media of this whole food addiction push is which is coming from the diet industry, mind you. They're the ones who are writing these things. Someone's writing a book and they're selling you a book about their sugar cleanse. It's not necessarily coming from the actual scientists studying addiction, because there's way more to it than the narcotic or hedonic response from the brain, especially in humans. So when you see a human brain scan of, here's someone who's a food addict, and they're claiming food addiction, where their brain is far more lit up when they eat sugar than someone who doesn't claim to have a food addiction, right? What they're not telling you is how much does the person who's claiming food addiction, depriving that food, how often do they have shame when they eat the food? And how how is the brain responding in the clinical study of it when they're allowed to eat it without shame and guilt? Essentially, you're stimulating a binge. You could eat this, and they're going to probably binge the rest of the day, knowing that, well, tomorrow I have to go back to my abstinence. Like the idea of abstinence, how is that impacting the brain scan?
So I kind of had like a sugar, I had like a sugar thing the past couple days. And I'm like, I was like, I know I'm not addicted to sugar, but damn, like I'm really struggling.
Well, it's something you've demonized. And so part of this process, and that's the problem. I shouldn't be eating this. I guarantee you when you're...
And I really wasn't doing that. You know, it was...
Yes, you were. Yes, you were. Yes, you were.
Well,
I'm just going to say, yes, you were.
Okay, maybe.
No, you were. For sure you were. You might have done this.
Okay.
I can have sugar. Robin, I can eat whatever I want, which is awesome, right? So you might be giving yourself the credit of saying, I'm going to allow this, which is awesome. I don't want to take that from you, right? I'm allowed. Okay. I'm going to allow it. For an anorexic to do that, it's a big deal. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so good job.
Yeah.
However, because you still are afraid to gain weight, that's where we talked about it. This is our second session. We had our first session on Monday. It's Thursday, right? Yes. So, and our consult was a couple weeks ago. So when you come out of the gates with this, you're to eat freely. Really, you're to let go of all the diets. And you've heard enough in my YouTube videos, right? Because you and I haven't necessarily talked about this yet. So what happens for an anorexic, okay, it's different for a bulimic, but for an anorexic, you're all of a sudden given freedom to eat these binge foods, and you're to allow it. And the problem is when you still hold on to the fear of gaining weight or the desire to be thinner than you are. Like you said, I need to lose 10 pounds. The desire to lose that 10 pounds conflicts with this freedom to eat what you want. Those binge foods are dangerous, but yet I want those binge foods. I'm supposed to eat those binge foods, but yet I shouldn't eat that binge food because I need to be thinner or I'm afraid to gain weight. So do you see the conflict between the goal, the direction you were taking you, and the direction that your body image desire is?
I do, but I'm also telling myself I've gained 50 pounds and I can't do anything about it. It doesn't matter what I do, it won't come off.
Okay, so hold on a second. Yes, because that's what we talked about is you need to assume you're going to be gaining 50 pounds. Now, here's the problem with where you're at, okay? What you're probably doing is feeling sorry for yourself. Like, poor me. Well, fine, I get to eat all this food. So there is this feeling sorry for oneself that promotes the consumption of, but then I can eat this and it doesn't matter and I'm going to make it happen. So you're not necessarily being guided by the body. You're still being guided by the narcissism.
Oh, I don't think I'm necessarily being guided by the body. It's more like I get to eat sugar now. Wow, it looks really shiny. Like, all I want to do is eat sugar. And I'm not hungry.
And how do you feel as you're doing it about yourself?
Well, and that was something I was like, I'm just going to slow down and I'm going to taste it and I'm going to notice and I'm not going to judge. Like, really. And I felt like icky.
How do you feel about yourself?
I feel about myself. I don't know. I like physically hurt.
Well, yes, I would expect that because you went right into sugar. But if you really open yourself up, go into that space as you were eating it, go back in your...
About myself. Like, I feel like my thighs feel fatter, like that.
Yes, and well, that may be the body. You're feeling the body starting to bloat. You're feeling those symptoms for sure. But how do you feel about yourself? There's a difference between how do you feel about your body and how do you feel physically. And how do you feel about yourself when you're eating these foods? That's what I'm talking about, which is...
Part of my brain is like freaking out.
Yes, that's what I meant by there's part of you that's like, this is what I want to do. This is what I need to do. And then the other part that wants to be 10 pounds thinner and wants to prevent weight gain is freaking out. That's what I was talking about a few minutes ago when I said, oh, this is what's going on. And I was like, yes, you are. Yes, you are. That's what
I'm trying not to listen to it, though.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Your conversation is still existing, and it still actually impacts how you respond to these foods. So what will happen is, and this may be unconscious, is you might be saying in your mind, I get to eat these foods, but I can only have. What candy were you eating?
Cake.
Okay, cake. I will have a slice or half a slice. I'll give myself, so you probably went into the freedom of the cake, which is a big deal. And then, but you went into the freedom of the cake with restriction. So it's still less restrictive than what you did before, which was no, all of nothing. We went to some, and when you go into... I was
trying to wait till I was hungry. That's what I was trying to do, and I couldn't do it.
Okay. Just put that aside and stay with me here. Okay. I'm going to give myself the freedom to eat this. Okay. But I will only have a few bites or a slice, or I will just straighten the edge of the cake, or, right, I will just, that's restricted. You're still restricting, and that restriction comes from your fear of gaining weight, or fear of doing it wrong, or fear of like, oh, I'm not hungry, I shouldn't eat this. So that tells me.
I did notice this too. Like, I wasn't super hungry. I had a couple bites. This was a different item. And I was like, oh, crap. Everybody's going to know that I ate some of this and I shouldn't have. Now I need to fix it. Like, I remember.
And I shouldn't have. Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's what I was just talking about when you said no. And I was like, yes. That's what we're talking about. So this is another thing that's really important. You need to be able, and I said this last time, so this is a great example of what I'm talking about. There's the intellect, and then there's the emotion. Those are two different conversations going on in your head. The intellect watches my YouTube videos and goes, this makes so much sense. Oh my God, I'm totally connecting. And then the emotional brain's going, yes, she's describing these feelings. And I don't like them. I don't like that she's making me feel this way. That's the dissonance. Right? When I said to you in our first consult, that was brutal, right? You were like, hey, I was mad at you. Our last session, you were like, Robin, I was so mad at you. Took me 2 weeks to watch that consult video. And that's dissonance. Because the direction I'm taking you is the direction you don't want to go.
Right, but I know it's the right direction.
I know, because your intellect knows it. Your intellect knows this is the right direction. This is totally connecting dots. Like, the reason why I'm impulsive is because I don't want to go that direction. I'm running the other direction. And if I feel like I'm going, towards fatness, I'll do anything to get rid of it. Right? So that's why I do all this impulsive stuff. The binging, the purging, the exercise, the weirdness, all of that thought process. Right?
Yes. I agree. I have to tell you this before I forget, though, because this was good. It was interesting. It was good. So, again, I tried again with the cake today. I should really try something not so sugary. Okay, and I wasn't hungry. I was like, I'm just going to have a lick of this cupcake because it looks so good. I'm not hungry. Oh, I'm eating the whole cupcake. It's like, okay, stop. I feel horrible. I'm not hungry. In the past, I would throw it up. However, I'm going to sit with this. This was a choice I made.
Good.
Remember, I gained 50 pounds. I can't do anything about it. And then my thought was, well, why would I not just binge as much as I want if it doesn't matter what I do? And I was like, well, because it doesn't feel very good.
Good job.
For my body.
Yeah, you're naturally balancing this. You can feel the urge to have impulses, can't you? It's like, the impulses are big, and you're sitting in it, and you're actually getting your brain to be active. So your brain is starting to get more oxygen, which is really good. So good job.
Thank you. But I was kind of sad.
Yes.
That, because before, the only reason I would want to not binge on sweets is because I might lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
And now the reason is because it doesn't feel great in my body when I do it.
Yeah, and it kind of takes the fun out of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, that's not so fun.
There is that. It's kind of like that impulse to binge especially if you know you're going to purge. Yeah. It's so fun because there's no boundaries. I can eat what the fuck I want. I can have cupcakes. And all those foods that you demonize and are afraid of and are threatening, what I call bear foods. Those are the bears. You know, it's the cupcakes, the candy, the dairy, the gluten, all the demonized food out there in the health righteous church environment, right?
Right.
And you get to eat those without shame, without guilt. And you get to have your freedom to eat as much as you want in that moment. So it becomes this bubble it's like a party in a bubble, right? But the bubble's always going to pop because if you do this, you're going to get fat. So it's temporary. It's a small bubble of partying. And what we're taking away is the bubble. You can still have the party, but there's no bubble. There's no end to it. And so why would you do this? Especially if you can eat these foods at all times. So this was the point I was going to make on a side note of what you said, which I think is very profound, very important in your own processing of this, that you connect like, I don't want to do this. It sucks. So it kind of is like a letdown. It's like, well, shit, I don't want to binge then. It's kind of like the party's gone.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, everybody else is going to bed and I'm just going to, am I going to party alone? You know, it's like so what I was going to say, it totally left my brain. God.
Oh no. It'll come back.
It is going to come back. It had to do with the impulsivity in the moment of it. First of all, you wouldn't have had that the first part of the cupcake. I want to go there because you're not recognizing what's going on there. You're recognizing the back end of it now, which is awesome. So you're consciously aware of what's going on as you're wanting to binge. The binge part of it, you're not quite recognizing why am I going to the cupcake? I'm not hungry, right? Of course I can eat that later. The problem is because you're still saying those are off limits, chances are the day before when you had cake, you said, I won't eat it tomorrow. Once again, you're still dieting. You're still trying to restrict, which only comes from the fear of gaining more weight.
Probably. I don't know. You know what I mean? It wasn't conscious if I did, but probably.
Yes, but that's what it is. Okay?
Okay.
You're still afraid to gain weight. Notice how you're trying to convince yourself with, I'm supposed to be okay with 50 pounds. You're convincing yourself with this. So the truth, if you tell yourself the truth, you're super afraid to gain this weight because you're probably afraid you won't be able to do it. You won't be able to do what I'm asking you to do. You won't be able to accept it. So you're probably just super afraid. And so that fear goes into, I shouldn't eat those, or bad foods. The badness in those foods comes from fear. You feel fear of gaining weight. That projects into threatening food. That's going to make me gain weight. That's going to make me gain weight. These are bad foods, right? So even if it's lessening, that cupcake, and you might be using the hunger scale as your diet. I can have that cupcake. I can have it, but I have to wait till I'm hungry.
It's true, because that's like my safety net. I can feel it.
Okay.
Like,
so
I can gain weight if I do it within the hunger scale.
There you go. There you go.
That's what I think.
So remember when I just said to you, you're afraid to gain weight.
Yeah.
It projects into these foods as fear. You're projecting it into, I'm not hungry, fear. And those are bad foods. I shouldn't be eating them. Okay? So you're connecting those dots now consciously.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be eating. I'll be fat. And then you start to negotiate. I'll just have a bite. I will just have a little bit. So that negotiation is with your fear of gaining weight. If I just have a bite, I won't gain weight. It's still into my hunger scale. So the problem is the fear of gaining weight is why you're so You're still fearful.
When I started all of this dieting, the funny thing is I was as tall as I am and the exact same weight I am when I started all this crud. I don't hate my mother. As a teenager, I hated her. I hated her for lots of reasons. And in my mind, it was, she's obese. I don't want to be anything like her. You know,
yes. So
as a
you
14-year-old, that's what I did to try to control.
That's the narcissism. I'm superior to my own mother.
I'm having a hard time. Yeah, like just it's okay. What if I am like her? You know what I mean? I know I'm like her. That's like ingrained in me. Like that was my way of not being like her.
Yeah, superior to her. And so the position change you'll have to make here is that you're going to have compassion for your mom and how she got there. And
it's true. Because she did the best she could do. You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah, and if she felt as horrible as you would in that size and shape, tell me how you feel about knowing your mother felt that bad about herself inside.
Yeah.
You are the exact mirror opposite of her in the anorexic side of the binge eating side. She probably felt so terrible that...
Oh, she did.
So with that said, how bad do you think she felt when she ate food? Just eating in general.
Oh,
how do you think she felt about eating? In public?
Everything, nothing. Unless it was like, there was like three food items. She felt good about eating.
So in the closet, what do you think she was doing? Kind of like what you were doing.
Oh, I know. Oh, she would binge all the time around me. It was bad. Yeah.
So do you feel like this is your karma for judging her?
Maybe it is. Seriously.
Because now you have essentially a worse circumstance than your mom.
Yeah, I do.
Because she was in a cage physically. You're in a cage psychologically for the same reasons.
Yeah.
You've got to maintain your thinness. She just had the overwhelming pressure to get thinner.
I've got to let my angst against her go. I mean, that was as a teenager, you know, it's okay. I need to just let it go.
Well, as a teenager, so just letting it go doesn't just happen. So here's what you're going to need to do. You're going to have to actually go into her life and feel it from her perspective.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to make you feel, or what type of feelings are going to come up?
I've done some of that.
Okay, let's do it all the way.
Okay.
Let's go all the way. In respect to how you really shamed her in your mind and just defined her as a horrible, lesser human being. And you positioned yourself as, I will be superior than her.
Right.
You're going to have to forgive yourself for that because you're going to have some feelings of remorse. Because once you go into what her life must have felt like as a morbidly obese binge eater who was living in so much shame about her fatness, you know.
Well, she's got so many unresolved emotional issues from her past.
Just like you do. Just like you do. Oh my God. So go back in there and if you knew what you know now, because now you're an adult and now you actually have this reality that you're living in. So you know how hard this is. Like you've discussed potentially committing suicide if you could actually find a way that it wouldn't impact your children. You can't find that way, so you're basically an indentured servant to your misery, right? So it is that bad. So now that you know how horrible this feels, and I need you to realize that she feels this way. Like when I work with binge eaters who are in their 300-pound, 400-pound rates, they feel just like you do. It is pretty horrific. The pressure that they have on themselves. Yeah, emotionally, not just physically. That's easy. The actual emotional pressure is completely paralyzing to where they are suffocating from the task that they have to do to just lose weight. It is like saying I will live in a cage for decades, for an entire 5 years just to be normal sized. And it completely sucks the life out of life.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you know that from your perspective. Now that you know this, I want you to rethink your mom right now. From this perspective, go back as a teenager. If you had this awareness, what would you what would you want to say to your mom?
Oh, just that I love her. I love her no matter what. Like, I understand. I really do. I understand that not only that, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it.
Well, here's one way to think of it. You would probably have been more loving and more affectionate with her. You wouldn't have been embarrassed. You would have been more. I
didn't even care about her size. It was her emotional issues that destroyed her on the inside, that made her horrible to be around with her emotional issues. And so,
do you think maybe you would have detached a little bit from them and had more compassion and not judged her so quickly?
Or not taken it as personally.
Well, yeah, like she's dealing with issues that are probably very difficult for her to understand.
I know, but the way she treated me as a young child under her care, because she has emotional issues.
Think of how you're treating your kids. Right. No, it is right. You have to recognize that she doesn't know any different. If she's that personally, she clearly doesn't know any different. Now, what you just said, it's not right. Hold on a second. That is an assumption that she knows what is right. So you need to recognize the superiority in your judgment of her. That she should know better. Well, obviously, don't you agree that she didn't know better? Like, she clearly didn't know how to resolve her issues.
That's true.
What makes you think that she's going to be able to know what's right for you when she doesn't even know what's right for her? Think about how you are disconnected from your kids. And how are you supposed to connect with them when you're not even connecting with the body you're in? You're victimized by your own body, the one that's providing you unconditional life and ease, and you're disconnected from your own body. What makes you think you're going to know how to connect to your own children? You're doing the best job you can. If you knew better, you would do better. So when you look at how your mom is, even if you could say she was terrible, she was manic, she was had rage fits or whatever it was, you could probably see that and go, I am the same way, and I don't know how to get out. I would if I knew better. I don't know better. You might be doing the same thing as your mom in a different way. She's probably doing better than her mom in a different way. Right? Because you're exactly the same as your mom. And you've got to be able to look at that and go, oh, well, if it felt like this to her, she couldn't have done what I thought she should be able to do. So the whole idea that she should have known better, that is so egotistical. Because you're holding your mom to a standard or level of awareness that she clearly wasn't at.
That's true. It's true.
And then positioning yourself above her as if you know how to do that.
I know. When you're going through it as a kid, it's so clear to you.
Oh, yeah, because you have no idea what life is like in reality. Now you do. That's why I'm like,
right.
Now you are in reality managing children and all this stuff. And now you're like, yeah, that was really ignorant for me to judge my mom based on some illusion of what I'm supposed to be able to do, what she should have been able to do, when I really am not aware of all of the drama and the chaos going on top of the fact that she had internal problems and shame she couldn't resolve. How is she going to be like that other person's mom, who on the outside is perfect,
Well, I don't know. Yeah, that's true. It's true.
So your assumption of her body fat, which you are judging, as much as you want to say, I didn't judge her body, bullshit. Why are you so afraid of fatness? That was the first thing you just described in this little segment of this session.
Well,
I just don't want to be like my mom. Well, you're clearly trying to not be fat. And so it is her, you did judge her for her body and not being able to control herself. You totally narcissistically judged her, for sure. And on top of that, you judged her lack of ability to actually resolve issues,
Yeah.
So if you're going to recover, you're going to have the humility that she may not have had either. The willingness to say, you know what? I have failed. My own superior way of being that I created as a child. That's true. So why are you still holding on to it then? So to let go of your childish perspective, you're going to have humility to say, this is far more complicated. This is far more confusing. This is not as simple as just do what you're told and do it perfectly. This isn't creating the facade of a good life is actually horrible, because in it is no good life. And so what you thought you needed as a kid, you've tried to create for yourself. In fact, you're probably still in a way trying to create it for yourself, thinking that's probably what's best for your own kids. So you're projecting yourself.
Well, because
onto your family.
The anger she would have.
That's victim positionality. That's her narcissism too. I guarantee you she is definitely suffering from a form of narcissism as well. Anger is a manipulative victim position.
Since we've been talking about it, and I don't judge her for that because I can't.
Well, because it's like a specific survival mechanism. And it's about being at the top of the pack. It's about being it's like a pecking order survival mechanism. It's like, I can't just be accepted. I have to be at the top. And so anything that feels lacking, if she believes that, that anger is blame. That's what anger is. I'm a victim. Blame. Your fault. This has happened to me, and I'm angry and I'm supposed to be at the top and I'm not at the top. I'm now at the bottom, and that, yeah.
When I start to feel anger I can start to feel it, I've paired that with her too. And so I would just, I don't know,
blame.
Binge and purge.
Yeah, the blame.
I binge and purge, and I don't want to. But it's a real emotion, and I'm not binging and purging, and I am like.
And now you're dealing with some of the actual underlying issues that are. It's like the volcano. It's all the lava underneath is now exposed. Yeah. Yeah. So these issues that you have come from and how are you supposed to know a different way to do it if all you experienced as a child is an angry mom who has a martyr victim story and blame on her history, on her parents, on a boyfriend, on the spouse, and all this self-pity and isolation and all this insanity, which I've experienced too. Right? How are you supposed to know any different?
But I know there's got to be another way.
Well, that is why we're talking, right? Like, okay, good, because what I'm doing and how I've positioned myself is now a repeat of history. It's like a zigzag. This is what I see. I see anorexic parents tend to have binge-eating children. Binge-eating parents tend to have anorexic children. It's like, because you're judging each other.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so if you continue, what's more, I would say there's a very large likelihood you're going to have a binge eating child.
Oh, no, I don't want any of that.
Because you're teaching them that fatness is worthy of shame. Thinness is worthy of pride. Food is the threat. You're not treating them that way, but that's how you treat yourself. They're treating yourself that way, and that's how you're treating them to treat themselves.
I try to hide it, but they're getting older now and smart, and I'm just like, I can't really hide it anymore, because...
You can't hide it from yourself.
I can't just say, oh, Mommy's tummy hurts tonight, so I'm not going to eat this. Like, you know, they're kind of getting smarter, so...
Yeah, and you're looking weirder and weirder to them. What's wrong with her? Why can't she just order from the menu? What's going on?
Yeah, I can't do it. I don't want that for them.
Why is Mommy so controlling? Why does she have to be so controlling? Why does she get so angry when things aren't the right way? Why does she become, why does she escape? But, there's behaviors that are very predictable in this process. So back to the mom thing. You're going to have to you're going to have a different story.
Okay.
Because your story right now is very poor me. I'm a victim. Right. She did this to me, and that literally is now you compensate to feel like I deserve this and I'm going to be better than her. And because if I'm fat, then I'm just as horrible as her and I'm like her and I don't want to be that because I'm superior. And so that's your story. How do you like that? How do you like that? If you had to write a book about your story right now, how would you like to read it?
Yeah.
It's kind of embarrassing. You tried to hide it from your
Not very impressive, that's for sure.
So we need to rewrite the story from a position where it's far less narcissistic. It needs to be more connected at the heart level as equals, right? And this is, again, the narcissist in you is not going to like it because I need to be superior than her. She's a shitty person. She treated me like crap. Right?
No,
where it's about you.
I've got to see it from her, what she was going through at the time and her perspective. And because obviously she could have done better, she would have. So
she didn't know how to. And her position as a martyr and a victim basically kept her from getting anywhere, which is literally what's going on for you. And she might still be there and still have her same goddamn story that really is a shitty story. So you'd have to retell the story and rethink it. I had to do the same thing. I had to go back into, why my parents were so religious and so strict and have compassion for why they would want to be that way. To me, it makes sense. Okay. Like, to me, it's so forgivable, and I would have done the same thing as they did under the same circumstances from the 1950s, in that time zone, in that era of time and the culture back then.
Yeah.
We're in a completely different culture. Like, super significantly different. So you have to think back, to that era in time and what was normal and what people were aware of and the misogyny back then and the actual narcissism in the culture was incredibly high after World War II. Very superior. The entire capitalism boom, the consumerism, and all of the things that they were being held, the misogyny and how women were treated after World War II was intense because men felt threatened that women were taking jobs. I mean, your mom was raised by a generation that I think had a lot of mental illness. Yeah. So were my parents who were baby boomers. I mean, the baby boomer generation is a very scarred generation. They are probably... I can see that. Yes, and they're... Sorry. I'm the X generation. I'm your child. Who had mental problems because of how it just passed down, And so you and I are now trying to protect our kids from what, the narcissism, the superficiality, the consumer-driven ideology of the 80s. I mean, it's super terrible psychological environment. There's no heart in it. Yeah. And so we're trying to evolve into the heart, like, why do we have to do that? Like, why do I have to be so perfect in my body image? And why do I, let's just let it all go and start from the center of the heart of a human. Why do we have to be super extravagant. Like I go back to the 1980s soap operas. Those were our, parents' ideal. Dallas, money,
Yeah.
body image, culture, success, narcissism, and we suffer greatly. And so anyway, so going back into understanding that too, when you look at her generation, how she was raised, how our parents were raised, how understandable it is that they had to prove themselves and stay super conservative, but yet be super success. And just think of how they were raised.
Okay.
The misogyny involved too. Anyway, so with that said, she did the best she could with relative to that. I also look at how different culture is too, that the generation that were raised in the 1950s, teenagers in the 1960s, during the 1980s and 90s, culture was significantly different. And so it's kind of like I'm raising my children now and how different it is than it was from the 1970s and 80s. So different. So how I'm raising my kids is a big, huge trial. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know the environment. I don't know all the cell phone stuff that they are exposing themselves to. I don't even know it exists. So they might probably come back and go, you didn't protect me. And I'm going to have to say, well, your suffering now comes from your victim positionality, and good luck with that.
I have a few, I'm sure you could have a few thoughts to help them through the victim.
You just don't participate.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm doing the best I can. I cannot do better than this. I am not aware of what I will be aware of after shit hits the fan. So, sorry ahead of time. My bad. I'm doing the best I can. And I don't necessarily know your individual needs. I can't know your individual needs unless you can vocalize them. And you can express them. And part of childhood is that you don't know how to express emotions.
Yeah.
Until you and I are talking and we're going back to go, that's narcissism. You felt superior. You didn't know that as it was occurring. You didn't know that you were shaming your own mom, that you were actually waging war against your own mother psychologically.
I don't know. Might have. No, it's, yeah. No, you're right.
Anyway, so those have to be addressed. So your fear of gaining weight is a lot about your mom, sounds like. Fear of being your mom. Yeah. Fear of the position you took as a child about your mom. Because that's what you're afraid of, is the position that you took with your mom. You're afraid maybe your children might do the same thing. My mom is so shitty. Karma is a bitch, isn't it?
Wow.
But what a good teacher, though. It's a good teacher for you to be. Now you have to experience this. What's it going to feel like when your kids, if you become fat, when they shame you?
Yeah, but I know you keep saying that I really shamed her because of the fat, and I honestly said I didn't want to be like her because she was fat, but it wasn't the fat.
It was the lack of control? Lack of control?
No, it wasn't. It was her lack of control over her anger at me. And so for me, I couldn't do anything about her anger, and but I sure as heck wouldn't be like her. I wasn't going to be fat like her. That was one way I could not be like her, that moment.
Yeah, so it's true. You don't, so it's true. It may not be just that, it's clearly the symbolism around it too.
Right.
So it's okay to say, you know what? Yeah, it is the fatness, because the fatness is absolutely symbolic of her. She sucks. So
well, I know. And I hate saying it like that because really, I really don't feel that way now.
Yeah, but your behavior is presenting that way. Yeah. So again, you just talked to me from the intellect. Doesn't work.
Right.
You need to tell the truth from the actual emotion side of it. When I said, well, you're better than her, that's the emotional side of it. That's the narcissism on the emotional side. Of course it sucks to hear. Of course it does. That's why you won't admit it to yourself. That's why you're stuck in this. Because it totally does. But ultimately, that's why I said in the end, you're going to have to forgive yourself. Because you're doing exactly what she's doing. You have no clue. You don't know until you do know. You can't change until you know. Right? Yeah. And so admitting some of this stuff emotionally, you can see, well, intellectually, I love her. I want to be connected to her. Intellectually, and even the heart of me wants to be compassionate to her. But the narcissism in me will do everything possible to stay disconnected from her. Figuratively, physically, symbolically. I'm going to disconnect because she is such a piece of shit. Terrible human being. She's a horrible to say. Waging war with your own tribe. And your own mother. So your narcissism wants to be superior and wants to shove her to the bottom and say, fuck you. That's the emotion backing this.
Okay. I could agree.
Good.
The emotion part of it, yeah.
So by having that awareness and allowing that truth to come out, it's like telling the truth. You should feel liberated to some degree. Like, oh, that's so wrong. I'm not going to do that anymore. You know, because I love her, because I want to connect with her, because she's my mom and she's my tribe, and she's a human being, like I'm a human being. Right. She's an individual. She's someone's daughter.
I mean, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I love about her.
It's never been enough to change your perspective, though, about her body image and the symbolism around her lack of control, which is why you become so controlling, right? Yeah, I'm going to be controlled.
I've never had the compassion with her back then and back then. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yes. And now you're an adult who can have perspective. So what you need to do is reconcile that childish perspective that was extremely, you were a victim to her. For me, I'm a victim. She's a terrible human. My life is horrible because of her, and I'm going to prove myself better than her. I'm going to be superior than this. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do. And so the symbolism around your weight and your thin anorexia is holding this idea of I'm proving myself better than my own mom.
I mean, I see it now. I feel like I can have compassion on her back then.
Well, now that you have some understanding of how hard this is, what I'm asking you to do is no different than what she would be having to do back in the what? How old are you?
39.
So back in the 1970s and 80s. So go back there at the height of the narcissism in this country and ask her to be heart-focused and forgiving and to stop being such a martyr and to increase her, degree of consciousness significantly to where she can forgive her past, right? Not so easy, especially in the culture of the 1980s.
Yeah. It's just asking too much of her, really.
Yeah, and go back to the food issues. Go back to Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig in the 1980s. I mean, and how the narcissism of that time, that women were really sexual objects. And in the 80s, it was very Twiggy oriented from the 70s, the thinner model, the twig, the tiny model that she was being held to that standard. And the dieting industry was massive at that point. The weird shit they used to do in the 80s. So keep that in mind. Like today, of course, it's become far more extreme in terms of not only do you need to be thin, but you need to be fit and you have to be orthorexic and you have to be obsessive about what's healthy and not healthy. I mean, it's become more and more extreme, but the amount of help that's available is far more prevalent. The fact that you found me, you're in Germany right now?
Right.
You found me in Germany on YouTube.
Yeah. That wasn't an option back then in the 80s at all.
No. She was basically probably going to a therapist that said, well, why don't you just like eliminate your fat and count your calories? And maybe you should do Jane Fonda. I do it every day, and that'll make you feel better about yourself. That's what the therapist was saying to her.
My poor mom.
You know, if you lost weight, it might really help your marriage.
She was like, you think?
Yeah, just let's focus on buying smaller clothes. Like, if you buy smaller clothes, that'll be incentive for you to fit in them. I mean, have you ever thought to ask your mom all the shit she did in the 1980s to try to be thinner?
My poor mom.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, there's no compassion from you. And you're just shaming the hell out of her.
I'm like, how dare she?
She has no control.
Oh.
There's a story behind what her suffering that you would that would make sense to you. That you go, holy shit.
Well, I know she was physically abused, like growing up by her mom, and so
mommy issues.
Yeah, she had, and a lot of emotional abuse. And she shared some of it with me, and so I think for her, she's like, well, I didn't, like, her step up is she didn't physically abuse me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
yes, that's a big deal.
Control, that was huge.
Yeah, so but instead she physically abused her own body. So that's a crisscross, right?
Yeah.
So in her mind, you should be grateful because in her mind, no, I'm speaking from the narcissism. You should be grateful because my life was terrible and I did the best I could for you and I did everything. I sacrificed everything for you. Pity me. I'm a victim all the way around, right?
Right. But I mean, that again, that's really the best she can do.
Well, yeah. Again, go back to the 80s.
Yeah.
Oh, they just didn't have the same resources, and all they did have was women should be, super religious on one hand, because that was really huge. Super thin, super rich, super consumer driven.
Yeah.
Such an awkward era. The shift in culture in such a huge. Would have been easier for her if the 1950s and between the 1950s and 60s was the same for up to now, because we would actually probably assimilate to their parenting style much easier. But because the culture was changing so rapidly like it is now, it was so off, right? The parenting style, like my mom's parenting style, with religious extremism would have made perfect sense in the 1940s and 50s.
Yeah.
But it was the 1980s, which was like a very tumultuous, like consumer-driven, we need more stuff, travel, family vacation, it was very much.
I bet you were the same way. Like, you probably weren't allowed to even listen to music, right? Like, I wasn't even allowed to listen to music because it could be bad music.
Yes.
We were friends are listening to. Yeah.
We were raised, no, we could listen to music. My parents were liberal in some areas. Now, we couldn't watch certain TV. I couldn't watch MTV. I couldn't watch.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, smut. That's smut! I love my mom so much. It's like, oh. And the thing she before she died, she was very much had remorse for a lot of things that she wished she could have done different. But why do that? She did such an incredible job. I mean, there were 10 of us. She had 10 children in 12 years. So I'm number 9 in 10. My oldest brother, who's number 1, is 10 years older than me. She had 9 children in 10 years. And then my little sister, who's number 10, is only like a year and a half, 18 months younger than me. Imagine the insanity of that. Plus, she stayed home, and we were very poor. My dad was in the Air Force. He went to Vietnam with the older 3 in the Army. He flew helicopters in the Army. So imagine my mother being pregnant at 20 with 2 kids. I don't know. And there's more history to that because she was also raised in the same exact religion, which was very identifying. And she got pregnant out of marriage, did not get anyways, I don't want to spill the beans on the religion, but she did an amazing job trying to recover through religion and to control an environment of 10 kids, which would make sense why you would need the structure of that type of control. So there's so much compassion to that. But yeah, the music thing, it didn't help either that we were raised in a very small town. So we were isolated. So not only were we isolated in a very strict religion, no drinking, no alcohol, we could dance. My parents were fun. I had a really great upbringing. I'm not going to complain. It was just really isolated from the reality of the culture that was changing during the 1990s. During the 80s and 90s, I mean, I just was isolated from it all. So by the time I went into college in 1995, 1986, it was just like, ooh, beer? Smoking pot? Making out? What? Sex?
Wow. Yeah, I wasn't raised in a small town. And, you know, my parents, I had a lot of fun with them, too. Like, we always went camping in the summer. And, you know, like, they try to do a lot of family activities. And I don't want to, you know, I don't want to paint them as, like, horrible people.
Well, no, but hold on a second. Your behavior is painting them as horrible people. So that, again, the emotional part of your brain, you're going to have to retell the story, and you're going to have to surrender this superiority. And the beauty of surrendering that is the connection you'll feel with your mother will be so gracious and so loving and so forgiving, and the evolution that you'll have because of that. It's like,
I can see that.
You will evolve, and you basically, and prevent this passing down further. The narcissism and the victimization, you won't pass this down to your kids because you won't be having the same problems, the same story, the same positionality. You won't be teaching them to do that. You'll be teaching them more adaptation, acclimation versus defensiveness, blame, anger. Poor me. Let me tell you how shitty my life was. You know, you won't be doing that. You won't have that story anymore. You'll be giving them a compassionate story about your mom, about your dad, about your childhood, and then in essence, you're teaching them the compassion story about the individual that you are. Your mom, look at your mom as an individual, separate person from you. She isn't yours, right? Yeah. And you're not hers, you know. So by looking at her as an individual, you're going to connect with her far more than if she's yours and she was insufficient for you. You know, and the other part of this process is you become sufficient for yourself. You realize that she couldn't have, it's impossible for any other human being to really fully grasp your needs. She could only provide you what she knew how to provide herself, which was not very much.
It's true.
So she did an amazing job.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I really do. You know, now we've talked about it and I've looked at it.
Well, and you need to spend some time.
You pointed out that I've been victimizing myself.
Yeah, well, and it would then take away the need for you to prove yourself through thinness.
Yeah.
It's like,
I can see that.
Like there's no pressure. It should somewhat depressurize the fear of gaining weight, because you don't shame that part. It's not this, it doesn't hold the same symbolism of inadequacy and failure.
Yeah.
Because there's more compassion towards how that happened for her. And then ultimately you'll be more open-minded with your own body, because you're no longer symbolizing your own body the same way. The superiorism of your thinness won't be so important either.
Yeah. I can feel that, actually.
Yeah, it will start to loosen up, if that makes any sense. All right, we got to go. Let's schedule to follow up. So if I were to leave you with what I need you to focus on before we talk again, it is really hone in to the compassion you need to have with your mother, and to connect with her as a pack animal as equals.
Yeah.
You want to connect with her as a soul, as a spirit, as a not a physical body. too.
No.
And don't expect her, just because you have this compassion, don't expect her to change.
Right.
You know,
no, this isn't about what. No. Yeah. Okay.
Because she may not be aware or conscious enough to even see this perspective. She would have to go into her anger story with her own mom, and she would have to have compassion for her own mother. She might not want to do that or know how to do that.
I agree with that.
So you can't expect her to change. You just have to see her as a child who is unaware, and you don't expect her to change. This would be like me going in and expecting my mom to leave the religion that she used to love me through. I want to expect her to just love me authentically was outside of reality, because to her, the religion was so important to your soul's livelihood and safety that that's how she loved us, was through the filter of that religion. And so when I recovered myself from body image and all my coping stuff and from my fear of abandonment and rejection, I had to be okay that they are going to judge me through religion, knowing that she would, if she knew my suffering, she would abandon everything to love me. She just wasn't aware, and I couldn't expect her to be aware. So I just had to hold on to my own conscious knowledge that my mother, if she was aware, it would break her heart to know that she was filtering her love for me through judgment from a religious ideology. Does that make sense? Are you there? Skype from Germany. All right, I'm going to end this.